we are not just only the workers for the banks, or not just only the workers for big public companies. If we are more independent, this will be a very good sign for preventing corruption. Even in the case of public company or listed companies, in this case, what you can see is that nowadays listed company or public company, they hire valuers themselves. They pay the fee for the valuers. This is not a good practice. So I suggest to the Security and Exchange Commission of Thailand that in the future, if any public company need a valuation, they just pay the fee to the Security and Exchange Commissions, and the Security and Exchange Commission will select or have a draw for their shortlist of the valuers to go to do valuation. So they will go independently. They are not under the hiring by the listed companies. And this will make our valuers to be very independent and can be a good tool to prevent corruption. This is the first one. And this is another example. You know, Fukushima, the atomic electricity generator in Japan. It was exploded, and a few years ago, before COVID, I went there to see the property price changes after the Fukushima explosion. And many people were afraid of the explosion and the radiation. But actually, what we can do is that, what we should know is that in this Fukushima factory, the problem is they did not change the equipment for around 11 years. If they change the equipment regularly, have good maintenance, there will be no explosion, even if they were attacked by tsunami. So this can be preventable. The disasters can be preventable, but because of the lack of maintenance. Likewise, in the case of valuers, if we have some good maintenance, some property quality check or quality control of our valuers, there will be no problem. Say every year we have to review the report of the valuers by sample review, or maybe we have to check the valuation firm in their company. We may have to visit the company. If we visit the companies, we can see that do they have enough space to work? Do they have enough valuers to work? And what about the report that they have done? Is there anything that we have to review or not? So this is something that will make our valuation profession to be more will be more reliable to the society and will be more independent. So this is the second thing that we can do for our profession. And another thing we need is then say something like ombudsman. In the case of ombudsman, you can see this is the role of this, and this is something that we can have to monitor our profession, so that it doesn't mean that if we are clients, a bank, or if I'm a public company, I may shop around which valuation companies will give me the highest and best value, highest and best value, not highest and best use. I mean, whoever who can give me the highest value, I will hire them or something. So in this case, there is no transparency. So this means that in the future, we need some ombudsman to do this monitoring, and this will be more transparent for our valuers. And if the process, if every process can be examined, this means that our valuation report will be reliable, and our role as a valuers will be able to help prevent corruption in the future as well. So this is something we need to have. Normally, as we know, ombudsman for the in the parliament, we need some ombudsman, and this ombudsman is not under the administration of the government. It should be independent, and this will help us a lot as well. Apart from this, that I did not put into the slides that I have just prepared shortly, that is, in each valuation firm or in a group of valuation firm, we should have trade unions or labor unions. This means that in every valuation firms, there are valuers. Valuers are employees of the boss of the valuation firms. So the trade unions or the worker or laborers union of valuers, there may be valuers from different companies, maybe 10 or 20. In Thailand, we have around 120 valuation firms. So the employees can put together, unite together so that they can protect their benefit, and also they will become independent to their employers or to their boss. So there are two levels. The first level is that the valuation firms should be independent from their employees, I mean the clients. And the second level is that the workers or the valuers who are employees should be more independent to the boss, that is the employers or the owner of the valuation firms. So this will be some check and balance so that our valuers will be more independent and have more dignity to do their business or to do their valuation. So this is something that we have to keep in mind. Another thing is we need some indemnity insurance. Indemnity insurance or errors and omissions or indemnity insurance. This means that as a valuers or as a valuation firm, we need to have something like the indemnity insurance. Like in my case, in my company, I own a company called Agency for Real Estate Affairs, a valuation firm. I have around 100 employees with me. And I also buy indemnity insurance. The indemnity insurance for me, my company, is around 20,000 US dollar. 20,000 US dollar. And this 20,000 US dollar will cover around 2 million US dollar. Cover 2 million US dollar. So every year I have to pay around 1% of the coverage, say 20 million US dollar. 2 million US dollar. I have to pay 20,000 US dollar for the fee every year. And this will be, will cover, say, 2 million US dollar. And in this case, if I do something wrong by mistake, the insurance will cover. So this means that I have responsibility to my clients. I have responsibility to the society, or this means corporate social responsibility. If we have enough corporate social responsibility via indemnity insurance, this means that our brand will exist. So if I am a new valuation firm, I may have only 5 valuers. But if I buy indemnity insurance, my small companies also have guarantee to the clients. So my brand of small companies and the brand of big companies are somewhat equal. But if in the case of no indemnity insurance, big firm will be more privileged because they exist longer period. And big firm, they may have many customers already. But if we buy indemnity insurance, this will give opportunity for smaller firms. So this means that we will protect, we will support the small and medium enterprise or SME, small and medium enterprises. So small companies of valuation and big valuation firms, they may be able to compete with each other with fair basis. So indemnity insurance is very important to make our valuation profession to be independent and to be a good to prevent corruption. So this is another thing, indemnity insurance or error and omissions. Okay. Next, we need forensic appraisal. We may heard something about forensic. Forensic, that is, if someone died extraordinarily, someone died not by old and die, maybe some murder or maybe something, we need some forensic examination. Valuation also. So we have a term called forensic appraisal. Forensic appraisal. So this means we need to explore something. What to explore? You see the photo, the screen here, the two persons are doing some business. So we are trying to examine valuation or valuer as well. Forensic. First, this is to belong to or used in or suitable to court or judicature or to public decision and debates, and related to the dealing with application of scientific knowledge and legal problem. So this is something that we have to examine the valuation report, and also to examine the valuers, say whether I get some bribery to value something too high or too low or not. Like politician, we also have to do some forensic examination. So this is the case of the application of forensic valuation. Say in the case of appraisal, this is the process of analyzing the real estate that we value, whether we go on correctly or not, or we have enough comparable properties or not. Recently, I just conduct a valuation for apartments for the United States agency, United States embassy. So they need comparable properties and quality comparable properties so that they can use it for the valuation. So this means that we need to have concrete data for examination. And the second one is the process of determining a value, whether the value that we arrive is correct or not. We have to examine the process of the valuation, whether we do it or not, or do it properly or not. If we do not do it properly, this means that we will be in trouble. And the third one is something about the reporting or the report. The report must be something that very transparent. In the past, you may know that some international valuation firm say if the name is Robert Redford, it is not Robert Redford, but just as an example, Robert Redford. The valuation report of that Robert Redford company, they just say Robert Redford, but actually Robert Redford died many years already. That is the name of the company. They do not sign the name of the valuers properly. So this is incorrect. Now we have to disclose the name of the valuers. We have to disclose the process of the valuation so that those who read the valuation report understand thoroughly. We cannot say that we cannot give you the process of valuation. Otherwise, in the future, you may do valuation yourself. You may not hire us to do the valuation. So this is not a good reason. We have to give enough comparable properties. we have to give enough valuation process, and we have to give enough explanation or hypothesis that we compile the report. So this is something that we have to do for forensic appraisal. And we need to review. What to review? We have to review and study the valuation report again. And second is to consider the ratio perspective, or look back whether it is a good rationale for that valuation or not. For example, if we value a public park, sometimes we need to value a public park. This is no market value, because no fair value, because it is not for sale in the market, but we can estimate the value of the park. So we have to have some hypothesis how to explore the value of the park. We have to know, say something like, if we want to know the value of the park, we have to know that how many people use the park every day. Say in Bangkok, maybe around 10,000 people. If there is no park, the government may have to give them some money so that they can go to fitness center or something. In that case, this means that this is the income from the park, if there is no park. And in the park, there also some activity, right? And another thing very important is that if we have an office building, we have an office building facing the park, the rent per square meter per month will be higher than the rent of the office building in another site that cannot see the park. So this is a premium of the park that is also used for the calculation of the value of the park. So the hypothesis to value the park must be very reliable or very logical. Otherwise, we cannot accept that report, that valuation report. So this is the role of forensic valuation or forensic appraisal. And number 4, to write and give critical report on the report or the valuation that we are examining, or also the law to re-examine something. And also to subject to the formal inspection, we need to do some inspection, particularly in the case of the building's age. We have to examine properly. But in the case of when we value the aeroplane or the airplane, the aircraft, in that case, we also need to examine the source of information that we have to buy from the sources. We have to buy information of the transaction in the past from different sources. So we have to examine the sources of information as well. That is an example. So this is something about the forensic valuation or forensic appraisal that we have to conduct, so that valuation will be really transparent, and our role of valuation or valuers will be help a lot to prevent corruption, and we will be a good tool to make our country more transparent. And if there are no corruption or have a little corruption, this means that our country will grow a lot. For example, in the case of buying a house in Thailand may be cost around, say, 200,000 US dollar, 200,000 US dollar. If there is no corruption, we may be able to discount 10%. If there is no corruption in the process of the approval, in the process of construction, in the process of infrastructure provision, if there is no corruption, the price can discount for 10%. So the consumer, right, the buyers, home buyers will benefit a lot. So this is something very important for valuers to be able to put tool for preventing corruption. So this is my contribution. I saw some chat. There may be some question or something. Please have 2 minutes left. Okay, no more. So now that is my presentation for already look for already 20 minutes. So thank you very much for your attention. I hope my presentation will be able to be beneficial for you. And the file that I present, I will send to you shortly after this, so that you can disseminate for our valuers. So valuers should unite, or valuers should unite under our institution of valuers of Nigeria, so that we have power to fight for corruption. Thank you very much. See you later. Bye bye, sir.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate. I think we're sorry for the poor network, but as I said, we will make sure that the slides, the soft copy, is actually sent to everybody, so that we can have the benefit of his presentation. The next presentation is by Boti King, but as you are aware, while this was going on, the president walked in, and I would like to, because he transmitted part to me while he was away, I want to voluntarily now, although while he was there, I was praying that he spends more time there so that I can enjoy this for a while. But he is here, and I want to thank you while he was away for your cooperation. You cooperated with me, and we had peace. I thank you very much. Mr. President, thank you for that honor. God bless you. I now hand over your mic to you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, First Vice President.
In valuation, with over 45 years of experience, Peter is a multidisciplinary property professional who started work in 1973 with a leading firm in the United Kingdom. He then qualified as a chartered surveyor and became the firm's youngest ever partner. In 2003, Peter was appointed Group Chief Executive of the National Association of Estate Agents in the United Kingdom, a post he held for 10 years. In April 2012, he joined the Royal Institution of Chartered Surveyors, RICS, and became their Global Property Standards Director, and then the Global Director of Professionalism and Ethics. During his time, he was heavily involved in the International Ethics Standards Coalition, which as chair, he helped to establish in 2016. He is also a member of the International Real Estate Federation and a senior visiting fellow at a United Kingdom university. Peter has been involved with delivering training for many years and is a well-known high-profile presenter both in the UK and globally. In September 2020, Peter left RICS to concentrate on freelancing work, which includes training and consulting. Your Excellencies, distinguished noble colleagues, please a round of applause for Peter Bolton King.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you. I'm going to hope that you can hear me and see me, but if you can't, because I can't actually see the conference video, then please somebody tell me that there's an issue. But I'm going to assume that you can hear me. And I want to start saying good afternoon and thank you, President John Ball and the organising committee for asking me to address your conference. It's a pleasure to be able to talk to you again, and I'm sorry I'm not with you in person. Now, this week, you have either heard from or will be hearing from a number of speakers covering the theme of your conference, asset valuation as a global anti-corruption tool. Now, indeed, just been listening to Dr. Sopon and his excellent address, and I'm going to be following on to some extent some of the things that he was discussing, especially it struck me the last section he talked about on forensic appraisal. Now, the topic you're considering this week, I think, is really right up there as one of the top important topics. And we need to remember that many would say that the valuation of property, especially in the USA, was a factor in the financial crash of the 1980s. Now, it's therefore clearly important that in order to provide confidence to the market, we as valuers continue to give professional and accurate advice. Now, when I've had the pleasure of speaking with a number of you before, and indeed in person out in Lagos, we talked about what it meant to be a professional. But I want to move this on a little bit and look at the difficulty that we have in this world of rapidly changing technology, which is affecting all of us who deal with property. And I think actually might cause some issues to the very things that Dr. Sopon was talking about. Now, I'm going to look at these issues and, as I say, the potential problems for valuers and surveyors. Now, I've been around a long time, as the introducer said, but I clearly remember that when I was studying back in the 1970s, I was taught how to carry out evaluation. Now, looking back, the methods now appear reasonably simple. Comparable evidence, clear mathematical ways of coming to an accurate valuation. Now, at the time, of course, there were no computers, there was no IT, there was no artificial intelligence. I think it's also fair to say that it was clear that then, as now indeed, the valuer was totally responsible for the data they used in putting together the valuation and the conclusion they came to. Now, things are now vastly different, and the amount of data that can be obtained by valuers is increasing at a phenomenal rate. It's now possible to get your hands on numerous data sets containing thousands of pieces of information. But how do we as valuers know what we're looking at? Now, data can be collected for a number of reasons, but if it is third-party data that you're going to use, how do you know what these reasons were? Why did they collect it? How can you be sure that the data sets are relevant to the specific work you're trying to do? I think it's worth remembering that the American author Mark Twain, back in 1907, I think it was, said there were lies, damned lies, and statistics. You've probably heard that quote. Now, in other words, once you're armed with statistics, you, to some extent, can tell whatever story you want. And it's therefore very easy for valuers to be led astray and come to the wrong conclusions if they do not fully understand where the data set that they want to use has come from. For what purpose was it collected? Is it relevant to them and the particular job that they're undertaking? Now, used correctly, it seems to me that there's no doubt that the increased data is of massive help to valuers to help ensure accurate figures, but you just can't rely necessarily on what's in front of you. And you must always take the time to give serious thought as to whether the data you're using is accurate and appropriate. As an aside, there are clear ethical issues here as well, which again, as professionals, we do at least need to think about. How was the data you used collected? Was it collected in a transparent and proportional way? Has it potentially been manipulated? Have you the right to use it? And by using it, could you indeed find yourself in any form of conflict of interest situation? Now, so far, I've been talking about really using data for the purposes of evaluation that either you have collected yourself or has been collected by a known third party, together with the inherent risks involved with it. Well, what about the future? And this is what I find fascinating at the moment. Valuers are already used to working with elements of automated valuation models, and also increasingly with systems that either incorporate elements of or are entirely driven by artificial intelligence. Now, as I mentioned, when I started out in this business, a property professional understood where all the data came from that they were going to use to inform their decisions. However, the property professional of the future, to my mind, can't possibly be expected to understand the millions of data points, the thousands of data sources, and the hundreds of calculations and algorithms that go into the digital tools that they may well be using, or indeed that are embedded into the very fabric of the land and the buildings that they work on, smart buildings, for instance. Now, valuers in the main, and certainly not me, we're not computer programming experts. We haven't got a hope of understanding how algorithms are put together. But it's now quite possible for a valuer to ask a computer to carry out a number of steps to provide an outcome. Specifically, the computer could create an automated valuation model which uses multiple data points to estimate the value of the property. Now, the valuation process, as we know, is often being described as an art, not a science, and therefore might be seen as subjective. However, this brings us to another problem. And I do wonder about this. If most clients actually would prefer an objective view, then it could be argued that the use of automated valuation models could offer this. Now, the problem is that the automated valuation model, the AVM, is totally dependent on the algorithms that are built and applied in the background of the software. But who programs these, and how did they approach the task, and for what purpose? Now, valuers just will not be able to answer these questions. So, without the complex IT skills, in the future, how does a valuer ensure that an algorithm does not just replicate what's happened in the past, which in turn means that any prior biases or errors become more deeply hidden in the technology? As we extend this example further, we of course then move into the world of artificial intelligence and machine learning, where the computer is constantly learning from the data it has access to in ways that valuers just won't understand or be able to easily explain. And you will have read recently increasing concerns out there as to the lack of control on what does actually artificial intelligence do and where is it going to lead. But it again raises the question, if you're talking about artificial intelligence, of whether an algorithm can be trusted. Let's assume that an artificially intelligent AVM uses more and more data and constantly learns and adapts to get the very best insight and estimates. How does a valuer make sure that they understand all the processes and the data being used, as indeed they're required to do in today's structure, to make sure that it gives a fair output? I would suggest that the answer most would say is the valuer can't. Which brings us to a problem when you're then trying to apply Dr. Sopan's correct information about forensic appraisal and everything else. Now, real estate, to my mind, is just going to have to address and is going to have to grip this problem, and the fact that much of the way the sector operates today is based on individual property professionals taking transparent responsibility for their output. That's a clear requirement of a professional. But I question whether that actually is going to be tenable in the future. If increasingly complex varieties and scales of data are used to support the best and most informed decision. Now, without a fundamental change in approach, I think there's a danger that real estate professionals will be forced to decide between two mutually exclusive positions. First, compliance with today's rules and regulations, or on the other side, providing the very best insight. Now, to be fair, this issue is being increasingly recognized and work is going on as to how data should be used and the ethical issues surrounding it. Just want to mention the fact that many of you will be aware that the International Valuation Standards Council is currently undertaking an exposure draft consultation on the revision of the standard. And there's an important section on the proposed change, which is IVS 104, headed Data and Inputs. Now, we haven't got time to go into today, but the draft accepts the fact that data used in developing values may be observable, but also unobservable. But amongst other things, it also points out that in all cases, the valuer must apply professional skepticism. I like that, professional skepticism in the selection and the use of the data and the inputs. In other words, you can't just assume that all data that it comes in front of you is correct and acceptable. Now, the exposure draft actually sets out a number of characteristics of what is suitable data and inputs. And it states that valuers in the future will need to use a process that maximizes as many of those characteristics as possible. It also interestingly defines fitness for use in terms of the client and intended user needs, the context of the intended use, the basis of the valuation, and the asset or liability being valued. And the sort of things they're talking about as characteristics, I say we haven't got time to go through them, but is it accurate? Is it appropriate? Is it complete? What does it mean by complete? That the set of data and inputs are sufficient to address the attributes or the assets or liabilities. It has to be observable. It has to be timely. In other words, it is up to date. And it has to be transparent. And this is really important. Transparency comes up time and time again. You have to make sure that the source of the data and the inputs can be traced from their origin. Goes back to the forensic appraisal that Dr. Sopan talked about. It, however, still lays a clear responsibility on the individual valuer to ensure that the data they use is appropriate and accurate. I'd also draw your attention actually to a new chapter, IVS 105, which is headed Characteristics of Suitable Valuation Models. Again, it sets these out in terms of accuracy, appropriateness, completeness, and transparency. But I still think that moving forward, the pace of technological changes, and especially artificial intelligence, will be putting valuers in a dilemma, and they'll perhaps be struggling to meet the regulatory requirements. Now, in thinking about my address today, I asked myself whether I was being unduly worried about the impact of AI. But I came to the conclusion that we as valuers and surveyors must be really aware of what is out there and what would be happening. Let me give you a quick example. Some months ago, I downloaded ChatGPT, which many of you will know is an artificial intelligence chatbot developed by OpenAI. It's a free application, and by January 23, it actually had become the fastest growing consumer software application in history, and they launched a mobile version last month. Now, I started playing with this, and to be honest, I was rapidly blown away by the speed of the response to quite complicated questions, which is delivered in a detailed and articulate way. However, at the moment, we have to remember it only uses data up to the date it was produced in 2021, and it certainly can definitely provide accurate information. But as a tool, this sort of software is phenomenal. I'm aware already that if you give it enough information and/or data, the artificial intelligence such as ChatGPT can, in effect, write a valuation report to you. No problem, I don't think, providing you have complied with the data input rules I've just discussed and also meet any regulatory requirements. But this is fine at the moment. But let me just throw a hypothesis out there. What happens when they change the way that ChatGPT learned, which was a restricted, what's called supervised or reinforced from human feedback? In other words, the application had not been let loose to teach itself. But let's assume either ChatGPT or another AI-based chat box is actually told to go out there and self-learn, collect all the data it can about properties and values. Now, to this, it might well make assumptions about socioeconomic data, location data, data about the wellness and happiness of people in a commercial building, crime rates, health data. Now, all of a sudden, as a user, you have no control over much of the output, and you would certainly have no chance of knowing how accurate the answer was or whether it had any bias built in. Now, as a valuer, you would have to be still asking yourself some very serious questions before being able to rely on it. Now, my personal belief is that a valuer will be able to increasingly use technology as a tool to help us carry out this job. But the hope, and I really hope, that the human touch, or the human eye, if you like, is also going to remain very necessary for anything other than the simplest jobs. If AI was ever totally to be relied on by, for instance, lending institutions or investors, there's a big risk there. And a lot more work would have to be done to ensure safeguards are built in. And of course, much of the AI world, as we know, is not regulated. In fact, only recently it was stated in the UK Parliament that regulators, if there were one, would probably struggle to keep up with the massively technical advances that are going on in this area. So this really brings me back finally, all the way back to accountability. And surely as a professional, accountability has got to play a large part in asset valuation as a global anti-corruption tool. As I mentioned, today a property professional is accountable for the data they use and the way they use it. But as we move into an ever more fragmented, data-driven and complex world, I have to question whether it is realistic for a single person to take responsibility, as you do at the moment, for advice or decisions that they make using that data. If they're not, then the question should be asked, who would be accountable for the data? How would be accountable for not only being ethically collected, how it's analyzed, how it's used, how it's communicated? So to sum up, just thinking about the future, the real estate sector, in my opinion, needs to fundamentally change the way it operates on what a person can be accountable for. It'll also be necessary to explore mechanisms for understanding and tracking the accountability of the data that we as valuers and surveyors use. Now, for any of you who are interested in this debate on data and ethical use, you might want to have a look at a website, which is the Real Estate Data Foundation. Now, you can Google Real Estate Data Foundation. You'll easily find it there. And they were set up to help the industry look at some of the issues that I've discussed today. I chaired the ethics subgroup on this Real Estate Data Foundation for its start for the first year or two. You can easily Google it and you'll find, I think, some very useful material. Now, I think my time's up. So I better finish before the organizers hit the end button on this Zoom call. Thank you again for asking me to talk. And I hope that some of the things I've talked about not only have been helpful, but you find interesting and get you to start the process about where all this is going to go, where it's going to end up, what are the implications for valuers and surveyors, and indeed what, as an industry, we and the companies, we need to do to make sure that we stay ahead of this massively changing field. Enjoy the rest of your conference, and thank you again for allowing me to address you.
So much. Thank you so much, Peter Bolton-King. Unfortunately, we could not bring you physically, but we have also enjoyed you virtually. We know your capabilities. We know who you are. We appreciate you for finding time to be with us this afternoon or this time. Thank you so much, Peter. Thank you. We appreciate you.
Once again, can we give Mr. Peter Bolton-King a resounding round of applause? Thank you. All the way from the United Kingdom. Your Excellencies, those of you like me that did not understand what the first speaker said, you're already laughing. Those of us that went to LEA, this kind of Ogbomoso grammar school, that did not understand what he said, but it's fine. I've been told that they had copies for us to go through it, and also that of Peter Bolton-King. Mr. President, before we go for our lunch break, I've been told we have Q&A sessions for the two. We'll just move.
No Q&A. Support has sent its own soft copy of the paper, and HMPS will share it to all of us. Peter Bolton will also send, and it will be shared to all of us. It's not interesting.
Chairman Planning Committee. It was Bob Marley that said we know where we are going because we know where we are coming from. That question is addressed to the chairman of the planning committee. Again, from the organizers, some very important information. Please, I've been told that continuing this event later today and tomorrow, if you are a part of this conference, you must have your tag on your neck throughout this conference, especially around this vicinity for security purposes. And also there is a barber procession that will be taking place later today, sponsored by Edible Restaurants. And we also have the cultural nights and display. Those of you that don't know what the Durbar is a procession that will be done with horses, one of the very beautiful sites of Kwara, Ilorin State, in case you are from outside Kwara State. Those of us from the southern part of Nigeria, from the eastern part of Nigeria, the northerners are used to the Durbar. Those of us from the north. But please, if you're not part of this region, you will want to be part of this procession. We have horses decorated very beautifully with people manning them, well dressed, showcasing the rich cultural heritage of the Kwara people. Also, for you to know that Kwara State has an emir, is also one of the seats of the Caliphate. So please, whatever you do, later today, the procession is from 5 p.m. to 6:15. I've been told it will happen along this axis, Mr. President.
Meanwhile, ladies and gentlemen, I need to welcome someone. He actually was the SSA Land Matters to the Ogun State Governor before he came to Kwara State as a son of the soil of Kwara. And of course, he is the immediate past commissioner for tertiary institution in Kwara State. I'm talking of Honorable Dr. Afis Alabi Abolore. You're welcome. Can we give him a round of applause? He's been doing so well in the tertiary institution in Kwara State, and we are so proud of him. You're welcome to the program.
Thank you very much. Charity begins at home. She have come to recognize their very own. It's nice to see you again, sir. The last time I saw you was at the Niesv Award Dinner in the International Conference Center, Abuja. You're welcome, sir. So, I'm back to your territory now, sir. God bless you. From the table of the president, I've been told that we'll be going on a break. It's 12:26 by my time. And we're supposed to reconvene here by 1:50 p.m. Everybody's supposed to be seated by 1:50 p.m. For the next couple of minutes we have, you are supposed to enjoy yourself, but by 1:50 p.m., you are supposed to be back, seated in this conference hall. Mr. President, Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, I remain as a surveyor and valuer Frank Oyakilome Richard, the only MC that's an ESV. Enjoy your lunch and have a lovely afternoon. Can we have music, please? We'll come back by 1:50 p.m. Thank you, Mr. President.
If you feel me, I was born not to make it, but I did. The tribulations of a ghetto kid, still I ride.
Everything home in the box to the left. In the closet, that is my stuff. Yes, it's my fault. Please don't stop, don't keep talking. I do. I'm calling. Telling me how I'm such a fool. I'm not like you. Done me to stay and you and nobody. She's cold, sabe, so that I didn't know. I would prove you out. Oh, because you.